Gila Golub is a counselor and teacher. She discovers and studies hidden dynamics in family relationships as well as corporate structures. Her work reveals and transforms dysfunctional patterns and self-sabotaging habits.
Gila's work is synthesized upon a lifetime of study and practice, exploring behaviors passed through multi-generations. She offers insights and techniques which lead to lasting growth and healing.
We had a lot of fun with Gila.
We sure did.
She's a real character, a very vibrant person.
And very dynamic and very forthright, and she's quite blunt.
Well, we love that in her.
Yeah, we really did, because it flows from a deep sense of conviction and her authority that is established on both personal experience, which she shares in this interview, and also from years of study and practice.
Well, she's worked with thousands of professionals and lay people who want to understand themselves and their relationships from a fresh perspective, people who really want to see with...
Well, it's what she says, to see with new eyes.
Yeah. We interviewed her at her home and studio, and she had this quote on her wall that really sums up what I think is the essence of her work.
That's probably the Ken Dyer quote you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Which is a great quote.
It is.
As we were talking to her, I think what we discovered is that her work offers a way to look at our family of origin with a deeper understanding and appreciation.
And at the same time, taking a hard and unflinching look at ourselves. Gila's work nurtures self-acceptance and self-love.
Yeah, but not to become indulgent or self-preoccupied, but more
to have a healthy respect for where we've come from and where we're going.
Yeah.
How can I teach my children to love themselves if I don't love myself? And how could my mother have taught me to do that if she didn't love herself? So we can't give what we didn't get.
I'm Rachel Cram.
And I'm Roy Salmond, and welcome to Family 360.
Conversations exploring life together. Gila, are you called counselor, or what's the term that you're most comfortable with?
What I'm most comfortable with is teacher.
Okay.
But that doesn't really tell people that I am a counselor.
Yeah. So I'll do teacher and counselor.
Yes.
Okay. So we are with teacher and counselor Gila Golub. Gila, thank you so much for welcoming us into your home today and into your studio.
My pleasure.
So I wanted to start just by asking you, you speak very much to people about their families of origin.
That is correct.
And how their families of origin have affected them. Before we jump into that, I'm wondering, can you just tell us a little bit about how your family of origin has affected you, the woman that you are today?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
So in 1914, both of my grandfathers came to Canada, and my mother wasn't born yet in Latvia, and the war broke out. And so her mother was cut off. She had 4 babies, and then she gave birth to my mother in the middle of a war without any contact with the dad. So no money, no food. So my mother was born into violence, starvation, and the absence of her father. She didn't meet him until she was almost 7 years old. She didn't have lunch, as they say in my family, until she was almost 7 years old. So my mother
didn't have lunch?
Well, it's an expression. I mean, she didn't have a proper meal until they left Latvia. So my mother had a lifelong lack program, bitterness and anger. She was insatiable. Nothing was good enough. No one was good enough. And I grew up with that, not feeling good enough, feeling stupid, feeling undeserving, feeling inadequate. And then I replicated that in my marriage, because we do replicate everything from our early childhood in our adult lives. And by the time I replicated that in my marriage, I had 2 beautiful, healthy children and a wonderful home and a great career. But I was desperately unhappy, and I sought help. And I healed my life, healed my marriage, healed my family.
As you were talking about your mom, it made me think of something I've heard you refer to. When your mom was going through those struggles in her early years, you were inside of her already.
That is correct.
That's fascinating, because that's true of all of us. Can you just talk about that a little bit? What do we know about that now?
Well, the famous study was done at the University of Atlanta where they had mice smell cherry blossoms while they were giving them electric shock, and then they bred the mice for 3 more generations. And then those grand mice puppies were given cherry blossoms to smell, and they went into an electric shock response. We now know that we pass on trauma through the mitochondrial DNA. So whatever trauma has happened in our family system eventually gets passed on. One of my disciplines is called family constellation therapy, where we actually look at an issue that someone has now that can be connected to a parent, a grandparent, generations past.
And well, this is a big part of your work with clients, isn't it?
Yes.
Looking at how the attachments or lack of attachments from their past affect and shape the people that they are today.
Exactly. We are all the product of our family system for many generations. Everyone's family of origin affects the people that they are today. There's research going on all over the world.
That's fascinating.
It really is. It's fascinating from my perspective because it helps people heal their lives. In family constellation, there's sort of 4 themes. One of the themes is breaking the bond from mother. And we know a lot about the developmental brain now, particularly through the work of people like Daniel Siegel. Dan Siegel is a professor of psychiatry at UCLA. And we know that the mind of a baby up to the first 6 years is building 1 million neural pathways a second. So a baby left in the hospital for the first month of her or his life, how can they trust? How can they feel deserving? Development is arrested at that point. And we know that that arrested development stays with us for the rest of our lives.
You've described the work of family constellation therapy as a process of, and I'm going to quote you here, Gila, making the unconscious conscious so that we can make sense of ourselves and our lives. So an inability to trust or feel self-worth can actually go back to disruption in attachment during the formative years of childhood, I think is what you're saying here, like this baby separated from his parent.
Exactly. It's a break in the bond from mother. That's what they call it in family constellation work.
Interesting. So what's another theme?
So another element of family constellation work is something called merging, where we want to be close to a parent. So in a way to be close to a parent, we become like the parent. So for example, I had a fellow who was a physician who shut down his medical practice, a very successful one, at the age of 52, and went looking all over the world for help because of unbearable extreme anxiety. He was sent to me after he'd done some pretty serious hallucinogenic drugs and ended up in emergency frequently. I said, "Where's your dad?" He said, "My dad's dead." How old was he when he died? He said, 52. How did he die? He said he killed himself. So you always wanted to be close to your dad. He said, "Oh, yes, always. But you could never succeed." No, I couldn't. So now, in a way to be close to your dad, you have what's called an unconscious loyalty to your dad, saying unconsciously, well, Dad, in order to be close to you, I'll be like you. And to be like you, well, then I won't have a good marriage, and I won't have a thriving career, and I won't have a long life. Because for the last 2 years, you shut down your medical practice, I said to him, when you were 52, the same age as your dad was when he died.
So these patterns from our past, am I interrupting you right there?
That's good. Perfect.
I'm assuming, Gila, there must be positive patterns and negative patterns.
Absolutely, yes.
I've heard you tell this poignant story about the psychiatrist and sex therapist, Dr. Ruth Westheimer, on losing her entire family in the Holocaust. And I'm wondering, could you tell that story? Because I think that's a good example of positive patterns from the past.
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
So Dr. Ruth was asked, how could you, having lost your entire family and being an orphan at 10 years old, have created such a wonderful marriage, a beautiful family, and a thriving career? And she said in that wonderful thick German accent, which I won't try to
You were considering it, though.
I was considering it, which I won't do. She said, well, the answer to that question is in the question. She said, I was 10 years old, so I had my family for those first formative years. And I came from an Orthodox Jewish family, so we had structure and ritual and ceremony and rites of passage, and we had a rich, beautiful life. So that even though I was an orphan by the time I was 10, I had that start. It's the first 6 years. Attachment is everything. We are organisms of attachment.
So in the midst of that attachment, as parents, we bring the attachments that we've had in our past into our new attachments.
That's exactly right.
We live out the positive and the negative. And I understand that you're not blaming parents in this process.
Never.
It's not a setup to look back and blame.
Never. Absolutely never. John Bradshaw said, our whole life can't work until we heal with our parents. I prefer to say our whole life can work when we heal with our parents.
And we all need to do that.
We all need to do that. And there are a lot of people who don't realize they need to do that.
What age would you say we come into a place to need to start doing that?
What an interesting question.
Where are we capable of starting?
As soon as we notice that we're struggling, I would say is the answer to that. As soon as we notice that we're having difficulty with our abundance, with our health, and with our relationships.
With our abundance, what do you mean by that?
Some people have a lack program and are always broke. It takes over their lives. So not enough. So we think there's not going to be enough love and sex and money and support and validation and adulation and acceptance and approval.
And so what does that do to us?
It keeps us from remembering the truth of who we are. It keeps us from having a love affair with ourselves. And the actual destination of the journey that my clients take with me is to have an unconditional and committed love affair with themselves. Because from that place, we can create abundance, health, and loving relationships. How can I teach my children to love themselves if I don't love myself? And how could my mother have taught me to do that if she didn't love herself? So we can't give what we didn't get.
You know, it's really interesting. We often want to fix our kids, but we don't want to look at ourselves, perhaps because it's harder, or perhaps because we don't know there's anything to look at. And what you're saying is we need to fix ourselves first.
I am. We parents must make sense of our own lives first, of the experiences that we had, and how those have shaped our brains in order to make sense of our children. So do you love your children enough to make sense of your own life? Do you have the courage to observe and heal your own issues and deal with them so your children don't have to?
So, Gila, where do you begin? I know there's a question you ask your clients when they're going to start one of your workshops. You ask to please share the worst and the best of their childhoods. Why do you start with a question like that?
I want to know what their traumas were. I want to know all about the challenges that they had as little children. I want to know if they were abused and how they were abused. And when they were abused, I want to know if they were abandoned by their parents or a parent or adopted and all of those things. And then I want to know the best parts so I can find out what mitigated the traumas.
When you make the comment, which you did a moment ago, that we all need to heal with our parents, I'm wondering if sometimes the word trauma might be a bit of a barrier for some people. Do you have any examples that are more in the everyday realm of those types of traumas that we pass on?
Okay. So now we find that parents are pushing their children more and more. You have to understand the developing mind. You have to understand that a child, when they're 2 years old, doesn't know how to share. And when you shame your child and you make your child wrong for not sharing, not understanding where the child is developmentally and making them wrong for being where they are. And Deborah McNamara's book called Rest, Play, Grow really lays out for parents what to expect in the various developmental stages so that we don't expect our 2-year-olds to be sharing when they have not yet developed anything with which to understand the concept of sharing. So we can understand that our 3-year-olds are not responsible for the emotional well-being of the adults in their lives, so we can stop saying, you're making mommy sad and you're making daddy angry. We can take all that weight off of them.
So even the most loving of parents, if we ask things of our children that they are not yet ready to achieve, if they're not developmentally accessible to them at that point in time, those are the sorts of things that can seem like not a big deal, but those are big deals.
Well, we're making our child wrong for being who they are. So how do they have a love affair with themselves? How do they accept and value and validate and acknowledge themselves?
Well, you're talking about educating ourselves, but one of the frustrations, I think, is that we can study for child 1 and get it. And then we have our second child or our third child, and it seems like the whole paradigm shifts. How do you address that as a parent?
You learn to read your child. So some children are born far more sensitively than others. But no child is born into the same family because it's already a different family when that child is born into it.
Because you've already got another child.
That's
there.
Right. Or 2 or 3, or in your case, your 6th child was born into a family with 5 children.
Yeah.
A very different family than your first child was born into.
Yeah, that's so true.
So what we have to learn to do is read our child, to listen. Yes, some children are born far more sensitively than others. You have to learn to read each child based on the child's own needs and personality. So you have to make a greater effort with the ones that are more difficult to read or more difficult to connect with. I have a family right now where the mother is not connected at all to one of her children and very connected to the other. And I worry about the one that she's not connected to. And I'm just beginning to work with that and see what that's about for her from her family system. Everything that's happening to us now in our lives is a replication. There's no new stories, only recycled ones. And sometimes when we find the original wound, the original story, the original trauma, that alone can heal it. Or sometimes when we find it, there's remedial work to do.
There's a Carl Jung quote I know you use in your work, Gila. He says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it
Fate.
It's like putting on glasses, I think, to see things in a different way.
It's interesting that you say putting on glasses. About 18 years ago, I took a workshop with Bruce Lipton, the cellular biologist, who taught us all about perception. He spent 4 years in a laboratory at Stanford proving that our perception creates our reality. And where do we get our perception? From our parents, from our family system. We were all given a pair of red glasses and blue glasses. And he showed a picture on a screen. And when we looked through the red glasses, we saw the silhouette of a beautiful lady. And when we looked through the blue glasses, we saw an ugly crone with big hair growing out of her nose. So he showed many pictures with those red and blue glasses to demonstrate perception. And we are all looking at the world through the lenses of our family systems. And that perception shapes your life and your experience of everything.
The last 15, 20 years with the whole study of neuroscience and neuroplasticity, it brings things like this into play.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
This understanding of neuroplasticity is the best news ever because we can heal our minds. The mind is plastic. The good news is that everything can be healed.
I think some of us may feel like that's going to be so messy. Digging into my past, into my childhood, that's going to be so complicated. It's going to cause chaos. It's going to make things worse, not better.
Yeah, it could get messy. It could stir up things. It could be difficult. It could be uncomfortable. Are you willing to sit in the discomfort to heal your life and change the trajectory of your children's lives? So I work with 16 people in each workshop. I would say 80% of them come from alcoholism and divorce. And then usually 80% of them are also divorced. This gets passed on.
In what way? What passes it on?
That's how you grow up. That's how you learn to do relationship.
Okay.
You don't learn to do relationship. You don't know how to honor yourself. No two people come together by chance in a life partnership or even a business partnership. They come together because they have similar unresolved family of origin issues that are meant to be brought up. Not so you can point a finger and blame, but that's what we do, point a finger and blame. And then we point a finger and blame all the way into divorce. Instead of taking the finger back and realizing that what our partner is mirroring to us is our own unresolved issues. So, person comes to me and says, my partner is rude and nasty and disrespectful to me. And I ask, and where are you rude and nasty and disrespectful to yourself? How do you see yourself? How do you speak to yourself? What is your inner dialogue? Do you walk around saying, oh, you're stupid, you're so stupid? Because that's what I did. That was the story of my marriage.
You make the statement that it only takes one to heal a relationship.
Yes, exactly. So eventually I get married. And my husband alters, amends, and contradicts every word I say. I am devastated by this. I am almost destroyed by this. And I think that he is the meanest, nastiest person on the planet, and cruel and horrible to treat me like that. And we go to all these therapists and all these psychologists and all these psychiatrists. And finally, I find a teacher who explains to me that he is a reflector, a mirror. And it's me that is disrespectful to me. It's me that thinks I'm stupid. It's me that doesn't honor me. And then slowly, over time, I learn to love, respect, and honor myself. And it changes. We've moved now 180 degrees. So it was me that changed the reflection, and then changed the legacy, changed the trajectory of the lives of my children.
That's such a great testimonial. You dug in and did your own work.
That's right.
That's such a paradigm shift, I think, in how we sometimes more naturally want to address healing in our relationship. We want to go in and change our partner, not ourselves. It's hard.
I get that. But by learning to tolerate what makes us feel uncomfortable, we begin to free ourselves from our internal prison. You were talking about creating the chaos, and it's too messy. What would make you afraid of the messy, of the chaos? The fear is that it'll always be chaos. The fear is we can never come back to what we call normal. But look what's now normal. Wouldn't you rather be in the discomfort of what you perceive to be the chaos, the upheaval of going inside and doing your own inner work? Wouldn't you rather take that risk and be in that discomfort to heal whatever is meant to be healed in that family system? Wouldn't you rather open that Pandora's box than have a child in misery, in depression, in anxiety, in addiction, in rage?
Well, I think there's a bit of transparency that happens in a parent to show a child that kind of chaos in their own life. We can sometimes think, well, then that breaks down my I've got it together front as a parent, the front that I need to put forward as being large and in charge.
Oh, I love that question, Rachel. Parents often say to me, oh, we never fight in front of the children, and they have no idea about it. So whether you think your children know that you are in chaos or not, they do. Mm-hmm. They may not consciously know, oh, mom's in chaos, mom's insecure, mom's unhappy, dad's unbearably stressed. Parents often say, we don't show that to the children. But whatever thoughts we're having are emitting vibrations. That's science. Mm. Our thoughts emit a vibration. So as Daniel Siegel says, our environment creates our mind, and then our mind creates our environment. So whatever our parents are thinking, whether they realize it or not, the children are little Geiger counters picking it up. Mm. And are at the effect of the thoughts of the parents, whether the parents realize what they're thinking or not. Mm. Because 2% of what we're thinking, I just made that number up, it'll do for now, are from our conscious mind. The rest is from our unconscious. And it is filling the relational field of the family. Mm. So there's no such thing as, hanging on to your own dark side. It's there. It's seeping out. It's coming out in the vibration of your thoughts and in pheromones.
So we might as well step up and deal with the dark side.
Might as well. Because our children will be at the effect of it anyway. Whereas if we do step up and do our own work, it gives our kids such a better chance to transform the dark sides of our family system.
And not repeat the same patterns.
Exactly. And not repeat the same patterns.
Gila, as we start to wrap up this interview, I'm wondering if I can actually stir the pot a little bit, because as I've been listening to you, I have this awareness that we need to look at our family of origins, but one day we will be the family of origin, and we will be culpable in the hurts and the anxieties which are conscious and unconscious in the lives of our own children.
I love the way you've put that together, Rachel. That is absolutely true. Mm. And I like to say, if you don't want to experience parental guilt, culpability, then don't have children. Because there's no way around it. The whole point of doing your own work is finding self-acceptance and accepting yourself as the parent who didn't do it perfectly. Mm. The important thing to know for each parent in the world today is that you are your child's best bet. There's no doubt about that. Mm. So bring new eyes to your children, learn about the developmental process, and above all, accept yourself so that your children can learn to accept themselves.
Mm. Gila, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fascinating.
My pleasure.
Gila's comment, I'm the parent who didn't do it perfectly, that seems to me a very key statement in the process of seeing ourselves and our families in a new way. And as she was talking, I never got a chance to ask her this, but I was wondering, do you think moms wrestle with this more than dads?
You mean being perfect?
Yeah.
Well, that's a big question. Mm-hmm. For me, I think I became a little more aware when...
Like wanting to be the parent who did it perfectly?
Yeah, I think I thought about that more after my girls grew up and left home.
Hmm. I think that would possibly be true for my husband as well, but this is probably creating a stereotype. I was just wondering. Yeah,
but you guys started Family 2.0, and you still have 3 kids at home.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty awesome that you and Dan get to have a second time around to do it differently.
Yeah, not necessarily perfectly. In fact, not perfectly.
And I think we all wrestle with the gap between who we want to be and who we actually are.
Yeah, it's true. It's very tricky.
That's a lifelong process.
Yep, it is. There's a lot of good things to chew on here from Gila.
There sure is. So thank you, Gila Golub.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Family 360.
If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe.
Rate the show, leave a comment, and tell a friend. Each Family 360 episode ends with music inspired by the words of our guest.
You heard bits and pieces of this music during this interview. Here's the song we've affectionately entitled Gila's Jig.
And you can find it in our resource section for every episode or wherever you stream music.
I'm Rachel Cram.
I'm Roy Salmond, and thank you so much for listening to Family 360.
To continue these conversations, find us at Family 360 on our website, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
We'd love to journey with you.